Painkiller, Chapter 1. I was back at the marquee, standing in front of the restroom mirror, inspecting my reflection. My best friend Lauren was in one of the stalls, whistling as she used the bathroom. She always did this in public bathrooms to cover up the sound of her urinating. It was something I never understood, but I tried not to judge her. My red lipstick was smudged slightly from the drinking of 2 whiskey sours, and my matte makeup job beaded with sweat from constant dancing. Usually I didn't dance, but there was something about the thumping music that I needed tonight. My royal purple dress stopped right above my knees, and one spaghetti strap had fallen down my shoulder. I quickly put it back where it belonged. It had been a week since Hyde killed Dax. I hadn't got any easier than it was the next day when I woke up covered in his blood. Being forced to watch the evil inflicted upon him in particular made it that much worse. An image of him splayed on my table, each limb removed from his bloodied and ravaged torso, flushed through my mind. The familiar warm rumble moved through my belly. Hyde hadn't been, nor seemingly needed, to be let out of a cage since then. As a precaution, I'd avoided being alone with men as much as I could without seeming like a recluse. It was harder than it sounded. I knew I wouldn't be able to avoid my alter ego forever, but I was going to forego it for as long as I possibly could. The day after Hyde butchered Dax beyond recognition, I started to fall into a depression. As soon as I made it back into my apartment after spending the entire day at the gallery, I just collapsed in a heap on the floor and didn't move for hours. It wasn't just because I truly liked Dax, but because of the ferocity in which his life was taken. I threw myself into my work and into nights out with Lauren, barely sleeping a wink for fear of what I would see when I closed my eyes, and the thought of Hyde coming out to play once I was asleep was overwhelmingly paralysing. Consequently, I made certain to make the appointment to meet with the artist of painting the work that looked so much like myself. One green eye and one brown, covered in blood with a human heart clenched in her fist. That wasn't until tomorrow, though. In the water, in the sink, the water in the sink ran, but I didn't remember turning it on. I shut it off and, splashing a small bit on the cool liquid on the back of my neck, I looked up into the mirror, shocked at what I saw. My eyes flashed from their almost amber brown to the glowing green, indicative of Hyde coming out against my will. I blinked and the glowing green dissipated, like it had never been. What was it about the nightlife and the men that caused her to surface? I was beginning to think I would never know, but I was still hopeful that the artist would have some answers, somehow. Hyde beat against my brain the more I fought her, and the near constant headache was almost enough for me to give in. It was a dull throbbing, not bad enough to cause distress, but noticeable enough to cause annoyance. My head hurt even as I stood there, staring into the mirror, with a look on my face reminiscent of a deer caught in the headlights, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, and cheeks flushed from the heat of the club. We went out every night since Dax, just so I could keep myself busy. Not to mention my coffee pot was getting a lot of good use lately, and even resorted to buying a Red Bull or two. "Well, fuck!" I heard Lauren scream from the stall. I turned around and stared at the stall door as intently as I could, being sleep deprived. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice wavering ever so slightly as nerves hit me hard in the gut. Sleep deprivation causes you to startle easily enough, and since I was always on guard, trying to keep Hyde under wraps, her sudden outburst was a bit much, to say the least. Lauren sighed in exasperation and answered, "Well, Aunt Flo decided to visit earlier than expected, and I don't have a tampon." There was a pause, like she was thinking over what to say next. "Do you have one?" I turned around, reached into my small purse, and pulled out a super absorbency tampon. Thank goodness no one else was in the bathroom for this. "You're in luck." I walked over to the stool and bent over, holding it right under the door so she could grab it without having to get off the toilet. "I don't know why you don't listen to me about carrying one of these around just in case." Her hand grasped it, her perfectly manicured fingertips grazing mine slightly as she did so. "Oh yeah, that's attractive to accidentally pull out of your purse, Blythe." She changed her pitch to a mocking one and continued, "Oh, don't worry. What's his name? You don't have a condom? But I have one in my purse. Let's see. Hairbrush, lipstick, tampon. Oh, here it is. Ripped my fucking pleasure." She laughed slightly. She had a point. All a woman ever wanted was to either accidentally pull a tampon out of her purse or drop it and send everyone and everything scattering, feminine hygiene products included. I shrugged and moved back to the mirror, leaning against the counter and folding my arms over my chest. Within a minute, the toilet flushed, and Lauren emerged looking like the inside of a uterus lost a battle with an electric hand mixer. This night wasn't going to be a long one after all. "You look horrible," I muttered as she moved to the sink beside me. I eyed her, taking the sight of her strapless bra poking out from the top of her knee-length crimson dress. It just happened to be strapless as well. I adjusted my strap again and waited as she splashed cold water over her face, not caring about her carefully applied makeup anymore. I was going to take that as a sign she wanted to go home now. She rested her elbows on the counter, putting her face into her hands. "May have to call it a night," she mumbled. "That's fine," I replied as I pushed away from the counter. "I need to get home and watch the next episode of The Walking Dead anyway. It's been on Netflix for who knows how long now. It's about time I finished the 5th season. After Glenn died, I just kinda lost interest. I don't know how you can watch that stuff. It's about the people and their stories, not the zombies. The zombies are just fun to watch die. I don't see how you can watch the Vampire Diaries, but you do. I don't question it to your face." I paused. "Until now." I raised my eyebrow and gave her a sideways look. She wasn't amused. But I was. You have a point," she smiled. Then, not letting the barrage of cramps she was no doubt experiencing dampen her playful mood. "Go home and take some Midol. You don't have to keep me company. There are plenty of people out there." I motioned to the door that led out to the dance floor, and more importantly, the bar. The music hammered away on the other side, rattling my eardrums. They had the bass way up too high for my taste. I may even stay and have another drink. You never know. Lauren shrugged. She stood and straightened her dress, pushing her fingers through her hair. In the light I saw the line of sweat breaking out along her hairline. She definitely needed to make her way home. She blew out a breath through pursed lips, placing her hand on her abdomen and closing her eyes. "Alright, only a few minutes of facing the world, and then I'll be home with a pint of Rocky Road ice cream and Damon. I raised my eyebrow. Yes, she loved that show a little too much, but then again, who didn't like Ian Somerhalder? Yeah, you do that, I said, letting the sarcasm roll over my tongue like a living thing. I'll walk you to the door. Without even realising it, my hand had grasped my small clutch purse, and I looped my arm through hers, beginning to lead her to the restroom door and out through the pulsing crowd of music. Once we pushed through the door, the coloured lights made it hard to see just for a few seconds, but my eyes adjusted quickly. Bodies moved and grinded against one another. A few bumped into us on our way toward the exit. I even felt the music in the floor as it moved from the soles of my shoes and up my legs to vibrate throughout my entire body. No doubt Lauren felt the same thing. Within moments, I ushered her out of the door, and she held a cab. It happened too fast, and everything moved in such a way I didn't think my slightly buzzed brain would be able to keep up. I headed back to the bar and turned to watch the crowd of people on the dance floor, the sexual energy moving through them like a tidal wave, just waiting to make it to shore. It would demolish everything, including inhibitions and good choices. Before I could ask myself why I was drawn to a place like this, I felt Hyde stir within the recesses of the dark corner of my mind that I forced her into. That was it. Every sensation threatened to penetrate my skin and ripple through every muscle, but I resisted. The music ebbed and flowed as the beat washed the worries of all its patrons away. The alcohol was a huge help in achieving that goal tonight. My skull pounded with the music, and I knew the only way to stop that was more booze. My usual was a whiskey sour, but I felt I needed a change in pace. Making my way over to the bar, I took in more of the surroundings and the people occupying the space. If it wasn't so large, I'd say it was cramped. Too many bodies moving against one another, hoping someone will take them home for a romp in the sack. But I knew from experience, you needed to err on the side of caution when it came to that behaviour. The last woman who was butchered on the way home from a one-night stand was just this morning. I sighed, happy that I managed not to get caught killing men at this point, considering their body parts were strewn all over the city. I didn't know it for sure, but it was a gut feeling. I sat down on a bar stool and spun around toward the bartender, who was already staring at me in anticipation of my drink order. He wasn't the regular guy that was usually there when I came in for Lauren. He was brand spanking new, and he could tell. His chocolate brown eyes still shined with excitement. That would disappear within the week. "What can I get you?" he asked as I watched his eyes sparkle. His face was gorgeous, all harsh lines, until he reached a full mouth. It was just full enough to be considered manly. His chin even had a small dimple that I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't staring at him so intensely. Dealer's choice, just no beer. As soon as I said the word beer, I felt my face scrunch up in disgust, causing my brows to furrow. He nodded and went to work on my drink, but I didn't want to make it. I turned away to watch the dancers some more and got bored pretty quickly, knowing that if I had just watched the bartender I would have been having a much better time. I swiveled on the bar stool to look at him again, and as soon as my eyes met his, he slid a drink in a martini glass over to me. Its pink liquid barely moving as he slid a napkin underneath it with caution. And a cosmopolitan for the lady. If you haven't had them before, you'll love it. Some women even say that they feel like Carrie from Sex and the City when they do. His lips widened to a broad smile, and I couldn't help but smile politely back. My fingers slipped over the thin stem of the glass, and I lifted into the air, making a highly informal dedication of it. To Carrie, then? I took a sip of the beverage, letting the cool liquid coat the inside of my mouth and my tongue. The first thing I tasted was the tartness of the cranberry used to make it, with a hint of lime. No taste of vodka, which let me know he used the good stuff, and not that cheap knockoff that smelled like rubbing alcohol and tasted even worse. The triple sec he used was top shelf as well. And this guy definitely knew what he was doing when it came to mixing a good drink. My eyes caught his as he watched me, analysing my reaction. I grinned sheepishly at him, placed the glass back onto its napkin and nodded, swallowing the sip I had just taken. You did good. This is very good. He beamed at me like he was a child in kindergarten and had gotten his first gold star for a job well done. To be honest, if I had one, I would have given it to him. He nodded behind me, eyes fixed on something or someone, and said, "Looks like you have an admirer." What? He looked from me and then behind me, and his eyes met mine again. He was serious. A gorgeous redhead like yourself, bound to draw some attention. I scowled at him. See for yourself. I used my core muscles to turn the stool. I looked toward my would-be admirer. He wasn't far away, only 10 feet or so, and I couldn't seem to take his eyes off me. They roamed over my body, taking seconds to pause on my breasts, and then the lean calves of my crossed legs. The black pair of Lebanon pumps were working out well for me tonight, if I did say so for myself. All the air in my lungs left my body in a whoosh, leaving me breathless as I gawked at the gorgeous man. Hazel eyes framed by thick lashes, and he had a face that was reminiscent of Ryan Reynolds. How did I always get so lucky when it came to the opposite sex? From the looks of it, he even had a body to match. But no matter how attractive he was, I wasn't looking to jump into the sack with anyone tonight. So soon after Dax, my mind just wasn't in it. Granted, I hadn't known him for long at all, but the few hours I did had been splendid, filled with talk of who we were and passionate sex afterwards that ended in disaster. That sadistic part of me was to blame for that. Hyde, I named her that after Mr. Hyde in the book by Robert Louis Stevenson. Little did everyone know that there was a seed of truth in that story. Stevenson had just filled in some of the blanks when it came to the information he didn't really have. The truth was, there was a part of me that liked to kill, wanted to kill. But he had nothing to do with an elixir. She came over me at moments that I couldn't explain, and I was a puppet on strings with no free will of my own. That was why I had been trying to avoid anything that may trigger her, barely even sleeping in the process. The man strode over to my place at the bar. When he finally stood next to me, he leaned in and spoke to the bartender while staring at me. "Another one for the lady, please." His voice rolled over my flesh like living, breathing smoke as I watched the words leave his lips. The smirk never left his mouth as he regarded my hooded eyes and parted lips. He knew I thought he was attractive, and he knew he was, and took full advantage of that fact. I quickly polished off the one drink I had as the bartender slid another Cosmo across the counter to me. I couldn't take my eyes off of his, and now I noticed something about his irises. There were small gold flecks mixed into the brownish green colour that I hadn't noticed before. They reminded me of the gold he used to find when he went on to field trips in elementary school, to the places where you could mine for it. Well, mine for fool's gold at least. The drink ended up in front of my face as he held it up to me, the alcohol beckoning to me as I felt Hyde roll inside my gut like she just knew where this was headed. I was going to be disappointing her in the next 10 minutes or so, however long it would take to finish the drink and turn the guy down, no matter how much my loins were screaming to me not to. "Thanks," I said in gratitude. "You're very welcome." He leaned against the counter and watched my mouth as I drowned the drink in one swallow, barely even taking the time to taste it. It had a slightly bitter taste that I attributed to the lemon juice. "Long day?" I shrugged and sighed. "You could say that." "So, when I tell my friends about you, what name should I give them?" I stifled a giggle and was snorting and rolled my eyes in exaggerated fashion. "It's Blythe. Yours?" "Kyle," he obliged, placing his hand on my exposed knee. She moved inside my chest this time, like she was trying to work her way out through my throat. Hyde knew what Kyle expected, but I wasn't playing any games tonight, especially not since I knew what the end result would be. Hyde might have liked the feel of the kill, but I still couldn't stomach it, no matter how many men she murdered with my hands. "Well," I paused long enough to place my hand on top of his. "Kyle, I'm sorry if I misled you. You may get lucky tonight, but it won't be with me." His expression hardened, and as quickly as the expression appeared, it disappeared. It was obvious he didn't like to hear the word no, and I would hate to tell him that would be the only word he would be hearing from me. I slid from the stool, and the world swam slightly and righted itself quickly. My hand jutted out and gripped the edge of the bar, but I kept my footing. "Where the hell are you going?" he asked as he got up to follow me and ended up pressed against me in my quest to stay upright. His breath was minty fresh as he stared down at me, my breasts flushed against his broad chest. I took a deep breath and prepared for what I was hoping would be the final letdown in what he would understand. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm going home, Kyle, and you're not going with me." "Really? I believe I bought you a drink." I scoffed at him. "And you think that's the ticket to get into my pants?" "Yeah, all right." I stumbled slightly, falling into him without meaning to. I could even hear my words slurring as I spoke. "You, sir?" are one fucked up individual. Like I had room to talk. The room spun again, but I'd pushed my way from him regardless, and began making my way to the door that led outside. Eyes were on my back as I walked away. Well, more like stumbled away on the heels that now felt like stilts. If I'd seen myself from a different perspective, I would have looked like Bambi learning how to walk. This I was not thrilled about. As I pushed through the doors and met the cool air of the New York City night, I thought about the bitter taste in the second Cosmopolitan. I drank it without hesitation. He did something to it, either him or the bartender, which I was not sure of. The sidewalk went sideways, and I broke into a cold sweat. I wiped it away with my forearm and tried to get my sense of direction back just long enough to make my way home. One leg almost gave way beneath me, but I kept myself upright yet again. Hyde was trying to help me fight the effects of whatever that arsehole had put in my drink. But there was only so much even she could do. Shit, I whispered to myself. Shit. Pushing my hair away from my sweaty forehead, I turned back toward the club to see Carl standing there. He was even closer than I wanted him to be. And even then, I didn't want him anywhere near me. He had drugged me, and whatever he gave me was working its way through my veins faster than anything I had ever been exposed to before, even in college. Where do you think you're going? He started to come closer. You shouldn't be going anywhere alone in your condition. Get away from me! I yelled at him as I stepped to the very edge of the curb, trying to flag down a cab. No one was stopping. My vision began to swim again, the bright lights on city living blurring as I watched each yellow taxi pass without slowing down. My heart raced, causing the drug and the alcohol to pump even harder through my system. No wonder I could barely stand. Warm hands moved around my waist, and I turned, trying to push with every bit of strength I had against his. My heel slipped from the curb, and I almost stumbled. But Carl caught me and brought me in, caressing my back with his fingers as we stood there. Let go, Blythe. Don't fight it, he whispered into my ear. Don't fight it, baby. I resisted, but I could still feel the drug pulling at me, just like his strong arms. I didn't have the strength in my dying arms to keep fighting. I would just be easier to give in, wouldn't it? My legs shook with the need to lie down, and my body felt like a lead weight had been tossed into a pool. His face was nothing but a blurred image in front of me now, all except for those hazel eyes, watching me with interest. My mind raced, but all of my thoughts were a jumbled mess that needed a cipher to figure out. My head shook back and forth, but I barely felt the movements, and barely felt my lips as I spoke. No! I pushed again, but he didn't budge. It was like my resistance meant nothing to his strong form, and I was a fly that he would squash against him, and he would feel nothing as it happened. His distorted face faded into blackness, then flooded back to me in a whoosh of bright lights and colour. Give in, were the last words I heard before everything went dark, and I felt nothing, not even Hyde, stirring inside of me.